against his old club in the big game.
Leighton Rhino... No. Leighton Rhino says, I've never been so proud of being a Leeds fan. Really enjoyed tonight and the noise we made ensured it was almost a home game. Defensively incredible and James Bentley was fantastic. Can't wait for Old Trafford.
Yeah, I bet it was amazing in that away end, to be honest. They were very loud, especially in the second half. I do think it might not have been picked up by the Leeds fans because of how loud they were, but the Wigan fans did try and rally the Wigan side, especially after they went 12-4 down. But when Bateman got sent off, I think that sucked the life out of the stadium from the other three sides of the ground. Pop the Viking said, a great game of rugby for the neutral. Thought the officials had good games and no option but to send Bateman off.
Indeed. St David says, finals rugby is different. Greater intensity and desperation. Wigan didn't get the points their first half performance deserved. He's saying Smith's kicking from hand was excellent. Leeds had surely burnt too much gas defending, but losing French was a blow for Wigan, and somehow Leeds found another gear, nudged in front, stretched it to 10, and Bateman's mistake gave them all they needed to see it home. Bentley was man of the match by a mile.
I thought Jared O'Connor was man of the match for me, but Bentley was very good as well. John Hamilton said, bit late catching this one, but wasn't expecting that. Really thought it might be one step too far for the resurgence, but Leeds soaked up Wigan's intensity in the first half and have a determination and grit they were missing earlier in the season. Still a little slow in attack and scoring points sometimes feels harder than it should, but defensively there wasn't much to complain about.
Indeed. And Scoot says, first half it felt like Leeds were only just hanging on, but then a different side came out in the second half and the game turned around.
Yeah, and the renaissance continues. I think I've written more notes for this game than I've written for any game other than the Challenge Cup final.
Well, obviously I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because I don't have anything like as much notes looking at my sheet. So I'll let you go and I'll chirp in when I think.
Well, look, the first thing to say is Esther was bang on about the first half, and Scoots similarly mentioned it. A lot of people mentioned it. I think Wigan were probably at least 8 to 10 points below where we should have been based on field position and possession in that first half. It was a combination of really good Leeds goal line defence, but also some clunky Wigan attacking play contributed to it. Not fantastic last tackle options either for Wigan, I thought, for the majority of that first half. The only one real exciting moment other than the try in the first half from Wigan was probably there was a break from field from just inside our own half, but he was more bothered about looking round for French than putting the hammer down himself and sprinting off himself like he was doing in the first 2 months of the season before French came back into the side, and like he was doing until French got to full fitness. But he didn't realise that French had got injured and wasn't on his shoulder and wasn't there, so I think that was an opportunity for something really brilliant and exciting from Jay Field that went astray. I thought Sam Powell wasn't as sharp as he needed to be. I thought for periods of the game, Harry Smith wasn't as good as he has been for most of this year, and Tommy now isn't as good as like Cade Cust would be. So, I do think the spine didn't perform as well as I would have hoped. I don't disagree with the decision by Matt Peet to play Sam Powell, even though he'd been out for a good period of time, 6 to 8 weeks. But I do disagree with not having Brad O'Neill in the matchday squad. And I thought that was probably Pete's first real mistake in coaching Wigan this year, was not having O'Neill and maybe even Shorrocks as well on the bench, because I think they offer better attacking options than just 4 middles. So I thought that was an issue for Wigan going into the game. I think everyone in the stadium, all the Wigan fans, when we saw the team, were saying, why is O'Neill not on the bench?
It just gives you, as you say, it gives you that either a change of pace or if things are not going as you want. Because obviously Powell is a stand and deliver type passer.
And he worked really hard in the game, but he just couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and a different option gives you something that even if it's somebody who is, even not a specialist nine, you just need. It would be helpful to have something slightly different there potentially,
or even just another player ball playing at 13 or something a bit more.
Mm,
A few things went wrong, and I will talk about Leeds. Don't get me wrong. I thought there were a few things that went wrong for Wigan. Smithies was carrying a knock almost all the game, weren't he? He seemed to get an injury on his sternum quite early on, and it did affect him, and it did, I think, limit him a bit. French obviously got his injury about half an hour into the game, and not really sure how it happened, but he tried to play on, but he just clearly wasn't there, wasn't able to contribute. I think he had one sprint on it and looked decent, but then as soon as he'd finished that sprint, he was buggered. And then obviously into the second half, not long after French had gone off, actually, just after French had gone off, Bateman had his badly misjudged tackle, and I think it absolutely deserved a red card. I don't think it was through malice, that tackle. I think he was trying to make a play, and he got it slightly wrong. But the way in which he got it wrong, i.e., direct contact to the head, means it was a justified red card. I don't think it was a dirty tackle. It was just a bad tackle. It was a tackle that went wrong. He certainly wasn't deliberately trying to break someone's fucking shoulder.
No, we'll get to that. But and to be fair to him, he knew it immediately, didn't he?
Yeah.
He knew he'd fucked up straight away.
Yep.
And he probably knew he was on his way out as well.
And he owned it. I think he owned it, didn't he? He owned that he'd fucked up. I don't think there was any dispute there with that.
No, and I think it is, the game's hard enough sometimes, but with the nature of speed and that kind of thing, it is natural that you will mistime things sometimes, and he was probably half a second slower than he needed to be to kind of block the kick, or at least put a lot more pressure on Caesar.
Well, he was coming from marker, wasn't he? He'd just made a tackle and then was trying to attack from marker, like attack in defence from marker, and he just was late, and then that meant that Caesar was through the kick a bit more, so his head was a bit lower, so it was fractionally late, and it meant it was high and hit him in the head, and really that is shit, because it means Caesar's out of the grand final.
Yeah. Obviously, it's inevitable with the protocols as they are now. So yeah, it's not a positive story for either player involved, is it really?
No, he got a grade B high tackle, John Bateman. It's been referred to the tribunal. I don't know if they're going to be hearing that tribunal this week. They haven't put up the result of that yet, but it could be a 3 to 5 game ban. John Scott got in touch off the back of Bateman being named in the England Knights squad, and he said, took his ban, no stupid appeal, and then Wayne selecting him for the Knights to get round things, total piss take. First of all, Sean Wayne isn't the coach of the England Knights, but I'm sure he had a say in what was going on there. But does John not want England to win the World Cup?
There are two fundamental options here, aren't there? Or fundamental issues, really, in terms of the carryover of bans to international.
Yeah.
We're always talking about the better integration between the international and domestic games, but I don't think this is what people had in mind.
No.
But at the same time, let's say, for example, in 2014, Ben Flower gets sent off in the grand final, and then it wouldn't be right if he was then playing for Wales, would it? In the internationals at the end of the year. So I can kind of see it from both sides. It's like you can't. You're one player, and you're an international and you're a domestic player, and I understand the arguments for kind of combining them, but it does, unfortunately, results in this jiggery pokery that we've got in terms of friendly fixtures and nights fixtures and potential things that are being attempted to do to get players eligible again.
Yeah. It's a loophole that's being exploited. Uh, and to be honest, if it exists and it helps England in the World Cup, I'm all for it. What I'd also be all for is for John Bateman to still be banned for 3 games at the start of next season and not play for Wigan, because the infringement happened playing for Wigan. And it wasn't a Ben Flower type incident where he's banned from the sport because it was so over the line, was it? It was just
No.
Grade D even feels a little bit high end for how close it was to not being a bad tackle.
It's the difficulty is I think in terms of the grading, I haven't read anything, but I would guess the impact in terms of unavailability of player has played a role in that.
Oh, of course.
And also shoulders to heads can cause some pretty devastating injuries.
Yeah, he was trying to make a proper tackle. He was trying to wrap him up, wasn't he? It's just he got it fucking wrong. He got it wrong. He got it badly wrong.
You got it exactly. There's no. I don't think there's any malicious intent, but the outcome is so adverse for the player and everything. I think.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with it being a grade D, but to me, I would say it's probably lower end, probably 3 matches. That would be my take.
Yeah, I don't know what his recent disciplinary record's been like, actually, Bateman.
I don't recall him having anything particularly egregious.
No, I can't think of too much.
The odd lower end grade A, maybe occasionally, but I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if it's 5, to be frank. But yeah, it was a red card, completely fine. I haven't seen anyone, challenge that element, and
no.
there's no point then querying, because everyone accepts that it was a poorly timed tackle. There's no point challenging the grading then. That would be a pointless exercise. I mean, imagine challenging the grading of something that everyone has seen on television, that everyone knows was wrong. I mean, who would possibly do something like that?
Exactly. John Bateman, he had one charge last year, which was let me have a look. It was a grade A disputes decision of a referee.
Oh, well, see, so it's a different area, isn't it? And also, it's only a grade A, so I would suspect that won't play a role in this sentencing. I would suggest.
A caution last year for kicking out. So again, something different.
Different. For me, 3 would be my ban, because you've got to include the red card in that as well. For me, that has a major impact. It's not something that's been missed by the match officials. They've punished it in game as well. So for me, red card plus 3 games would be sufficient.
And if they turned around and said, look, the night's games can't count, then he'd miss 2 World Cup games, wouldn't he? Because the England warm-up game would have to count, because it's counting for everyone on all of their bans across the Rugby League world. Right, okay, back to the game. I want to talk about defence, because people were absolutely rightly praising Leeds' defence in the first half. And I saw a lot of on Twitter at halftime, people praising their defence. I'd argue Wigan's defence in the first half was better than Leeds' defence.
Okay, justify your argument.
So, Wigan massively restricted Leeds' field position. I think Leeds only got into attacking positions twice. The first one was the very first play of the game where Singleton knocked on, Leeds got a scrum, Wigan put Leeds into touch on the next play. And then the next time was when there was the bad kick from Field on the last tackle about half an hour in. Hardacre made the break, and then Leeds had a couple of plays that got them up the field, and then Wigan gave away the penalty underneath the posts. And I think there was one attack after that as well, actually, where Wigan gave away another penalty, so Leeds got up the field off the back of that penalty. And then Wigan kept them bottled up and no threat. So I think when we talk about good defence, we get so drawn in to the obvious good defence, which is goal line defence.
It's the more glamorous element of defence, isn't it? Not that defence is particularly glamorous in of itself, but the kind of as you say, the desperate tackles into touch, those kind of ankle taps. You just don't think about Houghton in the cup final. Those kind of things. They're the most noticeable element of defence. But you're right. Obviously, if you can keep a team in their own 20 when they're on an exit set, then that's much more effective.
I don't
but it's
remember
not as
Leeds
exciting.
kicking